Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video today we're going to be talking about a very important subject, and that is the 7 mistakes that you're probably making with your low content books. These are the mistakes that I see the most commonly and definitely need to be addressed. So if you are struggling to make sales with your KDP books, then most likely it is one of these mistakes. So let's get right into it. The first mistake is poor book design. Listen, you guys, if your book doesn't look good, at the end of the day, it's just not going to sell, and that's unfortunately the bottom line. And this is especially true for things like no content books, like we're talking notebooks, journals, composition books. With those types of books, people are pretty much just looking at the exterior, at the cover. Like if they're looking for a cute floral notebook, then they're going to look for a cute floral notebook. They don't really care about like the lined interior inside, because it's kind of hard to get that wrong. At that point, it's the cover that they're most looking at, as opposed to things like puzzle books where it's more the inside that they care about rather than the outside. But still, with any types of books, whether it is like a higher content book or a no low content book, you're going to want to have your design look good. You're going to want it to stand out and be unique and draw your customer in. This also includes, you want to make sure that your book design doesn't look wonky, it doesn't look askew. You want to make sure that it's as center as possible. I know it can kind of be annoying with like the KDP book dimensions, but you want everything to line up and look good. The next mistake that is the most common is not using keywords, or even just using poor keywords that don't relate and things like that. If you're trying to make sales organically, if you're not using keywords, then how do you expect people to find your books? You need to make sure that before every book you publish, you do keyword research, whether you use BookBolt, Helium 10, whatever. Make sure that you are doing keyword research and that you are picking out good keywords. Those include keywords that are low competition, as in there aren't that many books trying to rank for that keyword, but also high search volume. Those two meet in the middle. I've said that a couple times. Basically, that means that there are more people looking for your book and less people trying to rank for it. So it makes it a lot easier for your book to be found and for customers to come and purchase your books. So always make sure you're using keywords. Make sure you're using keywords that relate to the book that you are trying to sell, and also that you think would make good search terms that your customers would be searching for in order to find the book that you're selling. The third most common mistake I see is not using categories. For all of your KDP books, you have at least 2 categories. You can do up to 10, but you have to contact KDP support about that, and they can be kind of picky. So make sure that you're always using at least 2, because if you have 2, why not use both of them? So I've talked a bit about categories before. I want to talk a little bit about what I would recommend. For your categories, go with something that relates. For me personally, I did at one point use categories that were super duper random, because this is how it works. So basically, when someone buys your book, your BSR, which stands for your bestseller rank, is going to go up. And the amount that it goes up depends on the categories that you are using, because your BSR is basically your ranking in both of those categories. I think it's combined average, something like that. So if there aren't a ton of books ranking in those categories, naturally you're going to shoot up a lot higher than for much more high competition categories that more people are going to be using. So that is basically the way that it works. So ultimately, you want to go with categories that are low competition. And to determine that, I'd kind of recommend just using your own judgment. Like, it's not that hard to think, oh, like probably juvenile, fiction, fantasy would be much higher competition, just because that could be so many different books in there, as opposed to, I don't know, tax auditing. So basically, I would recommend that you use low competition category. However, don't go with something super duper random. That is something that I mentioned in the past. It's not what I'm doing now, just because I have heard, like when I was currently doing it, like I kind of thought there were no repercussions, but there is a possibility that KDP could be like, hey, that doesn't relate, don't use that. So go with something that relates, at least to somewhat remotely. Like, there are a bunch of different categories you can use. For example, a composition book, I'm pretty sure there's composition and creative writing over in juvenile nonfiction. If you do some digging, you can find categories that are probably lower competition but that do relate to your book. So basically, always use both categories, look for low competition categories, and make sure that they relate to your book. The fourth most common mistake that I see with low content books is not experimenting. When you are first starting out, I would personally recommend that you keep just pumping out books, keep trying new things, make notebooks, make planners, make like activity books, all sorts of things. This helps you be able to experiment with things like designs and keywords, things that might not come naturally at first. I know that looking back on my low content books, like some of the ones that I did more in the beginning, like they haven't really sold and some of them don't look as good. But as I kept working at it and kept experimenting and just fine-tuning some details and figuring out what worked for me and what was selling, then I was much more able to keep pumping out those same books and keep creating them in different unique ways and then make a lot more sales. With low content books, I do personally believe that there is quantity as well as quantity involved in the equation. Always make sure that your books are high quality, look good, all of that jazz. But at the same time, I do think that the more that you create, the better you get at creating low content books and the easier it is to make sales. But I will be talking more about quantity in a little bit, so stay tuned for that. But long story short, keep experimenting. I don't want you to spend 5 million years on 5 books. For all you know, they might look super duper pretty, but when you're first starting out, it can be kind of harder to grasp things like categories and niches and keywords, which is why I recommend continuing to experiment, because sure, your design will get better, but then you'll also be able to better understand which keywords work better, which niches work better, and things like that might have like taken a little while to understand when first starting out. So keep experimenting, do not stop at just 5 books and hope for the best. And then the fifth mistake that I see most commonly is focusing only on quantity. I have mentioned before, I do think quantity is important, I do think experimenting is important, but quality is also super duper important. The thing with quantity is, sure, if you have like 1,000 books and let's say they're all kind of average, subpar, maybe somewhat low quality, here's how it's gonna work. Basically, you might be getting like a sale here or there, you might be getting more perhaps than the average person, but the thing is there's not gonna be much consistency to your sales. Most likely your books are not going to blow up. What I would recommend is that you keep producing high quality books. You work to keep producing more of them, but make sure that they are always high quality. Don't be trying to create books in like 2 seconds, because those books are not going to do well. You need to make sure you put enough time into your keyword research, your niche research, your design, all that jazz, or else they're not going to be seeing the sale consistency that you want. And maybe they'll sell every now and then, but that is not a good option for long-term growth. Okay guys, as you can see, we now have a completely different backdrop and I also look a little bit different, and the reason is because my video actually cut out like the last 5 minutes of footage, so I'm not going to redo that last part. So hopefully none of this conflicts with what I already talked about. But anyway, we are now on to the 6th mistake that I see most commonly when it comes to low content books, and that is only using high competition keywords. And when I'm talking about high competition keywords, I'm talking about, for example, let's say you are creating a notebook, and so you might use the keyword notebook or cute notebook. And the problem with these keywords is that they are very, very high competition. Most likely you're gonna type in notebook and you're going to find a whole crap ton of notebooks that have been on Amazon for years and years and years. And so it's going to be incredibly, incredibly difficult to compete with those things, which is why you need to have a good balance of high competition keywords as well as low competition keywords. So for example, notebook would be your high competition keyword. And then if we're talking low competition keywords, we'd have things like, let's say it's a floral notebook, nice and basic, but cute. So you could do floral notebook for girls, floral notebook for women. So we're talking more long tail keywords. And a long tail keyword is basically, you know, notebook, one word, floral notebook for girls, a lot more words. So that's a long tail keyword. So you would want to be using as many long tail keywords as possible. It's good to use a few high competition keywords, but keep it very, very minimal, and try, you could even go with kind of long tail high competition keywords. Just try and keep it as specific as possible. And the beauty with using keywords that are more specific, that are long tail, is that people who are searching for those keywords are more likely to go with your book, because, for example, notebook is very, very basic. People typing notebook could be looking for like literally any kind of notebook. They could be looking for a horse notebook, a notebook with soccer balls on it. Like, you literally have no idea. But if you go for keywords, like let's say it's a floral notebook targeted for girls, then if you use the keyword floral notebook for girls and someone types that in, they will see your book and they'll be like, well, that is exactly what I'm looking for, and they will be more likely to purchase your book. So basically, don't only use high competition keywords. Look for as many keywords that you can that are low competition, but still somewhat high search volume, like as high as possible for the low competition, and also relate to your book. And ideally, if it's long tail, the better. And now the seventh mistake and the last mistake that I see most commonly with creating and publishing low content books is not standing out. You need to find things that people want, but that are not being targeted as often when it comes to products that people are creating and trying to sell. When it comes to standing out, there are 3 B's you need to keep in mind. I kind of came up with this on my own because it kind of just worked out. Your book needs to be big and bold and beautiful. Now let's first talk about big. And when I say big, I'm not referring to, go buy an 8.5 by 11 book as opposed to a 6 by 9. No, I'm talking about the design for your book. It needs to be nice and big, especially with your text. Your text is very, very important because that is what clues your customers in to what the book is that you are trying to sell. So for example, let's say it's a planner for teachers. You want the text on the book to be very, very big and clear and obvious that it is a planner for teachers. Because then when someone is searching for one of those things and they see this pretty book that they like, the design looks good, and it says planner for teachers in nice big bold letters, but obviously not too big and bold that it would look like unappealing or, I don't know, ugly. That person would be more likely to purchase the book because that's exactly what they're looking for, and that's kind of the gist. You want your text to be nice and big and clear. You don't want the design to conflict with the text, and you also want it to be big and bold to the point that it's very clear to your customer as they're scrolling that your book is what they're looking for. Especially when it comes to like specifications, you can put the number of pages, you can put the dimensions even on the front if you choose to. And then if it's nice and big enough and someone's scrolling through and they're scrolling and then they just see planner for teachers, 8.5 by 11, 200 pages, they're like, whoa, that is exactly what I'm looking for, that's perfect. So that's why it's very important to make sure your text is big and bold and very clear. And at the same time, you want it to be a very beautiful and attractive book, and you want to make sure that your design looks good. You need to make sure you have a balance between big and bold and also beautiful, because you could obviously just do like huge text, but it's not going to necessarily look good if it's not against the right design and the two just don't mesh properly. So make sure that your text is big and bold, and also that your design looks good and is cohesive and is attractive to your customers. All right guys, that about wraps it up. But before you go, I have some very, very exciting news to share with you, and it is that I have started a Facebook group called Passive Wealth Empires. And if you're interested in joining, click on the link on the screen. I'll put it somewhere around here. Anyway, and I'll also put it in the description. So go ahead and join that group if you're interested in learning more about generating passive income and just joining a community just like you. And I'm especially focused on KDP, obviously, because that's kind of the bulk of what I do and the bulk of my channel. But I am calling it Passive Wealth Empires because I'm keeping it open for anyone who is interested in any form of passive income. Might change down the road, we'll see. So make sure to go check it out. There's gonna be an intro video like right as the first post, so you can learn a little bit more about the group and decide if that's something you wanna join. Anyway, I'm very, very excited about this, and if you wanna join, then please join. Anyway, if you've liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe for more content just like this. I would super duper appreciate it, and I would love to have you. Anyway, I hope you all have a fabulous rest of your day. Bye. Called Building Passive, what have I called it? Passive Wealth Empires. Passive Wealth Empires, PWE.